Yeah, I said it ain't no running. I'm really dropping the pain. The famous back in the game. You better walk away. No running. I really do what I do. I'm breaking just like the news.
All right, man. We watching Wrestle with Andy video. It's what was it called? Self-made wrestlers that maximize their minutes. So basically self-made wrestlers that got themselves over on their own. Off the top of my head, I could think of Joe Hendry. He had Danhausen in the mix. I can't think of like many other people. Maybe Drew. I don't know, but we'll see. But yeah, bow.
Sometimes a wrestler will get lucky in their career in that they'll be afforded all the opportunities to succeed. Just look at recent acts like Roman Reigns or Braun Breaker, people with strong family connections, if you need an example of this in action. But not all performers can be so lucky.
LA Knight is a good one.
Some might have to fight to become a success, with them doing so by maximizing every minute they're given.
Chelsea
and it's
Green,
those people we
Joe
want
Hendry,
to look at
I said that.
The self-made figures
Kit
of
Wilson.
the industry. Beginning with our first entry, Danhausen. Now, Danhausen is a guy who really should have never made it as far as he has, as in another time period, his gimmick would have been seen as too indie, too one note to make it to the big time.
No kidding.
But this was not a reality the Detroit native was willing to accept for himself. No, he'd be determined to prove his naysayers wrong and turn himself into a very marketable act. How would he do this? Well, the first way would be by creating his Munsters-esque character of a demon who's very nice, very evil, with the logic being that he knows if he's too evil, then people won't like him. What a turnaround that was then from the early work of Donovan Danhausen, the man behind the face paint.
Donovan Danhausen is his real name?
He'd be a lot more of a generic creator wrestler on the Midwest indie circuit. But once his alter ego was developed, things changed as he suddenly got a lot of attention for his comedy act.
Hold on. Ain't no way Donovan Danhausen is his real name. I'm about to look this up. Hold up. Nah, that ain't his real name. Donovan Danhausen. Oh my God, that's his real name. Donovan Andrew Danhausen. What? All right. Okay. What in the world? I didn't know. Hey, all
Places
right.
like Ring of Honor. So much attention would he get, in fact, he'd eventually be signed by AEW, where he'd serve a role as mascot of the Best Friends. Sadly though, for a variety of reasons, Danhausen's time in All Elite Wrestling would end with him no longer being booked. And that made it seem like he might be done in terms of being a TV act for a while. So how did he end up in WWE then?
CM Punk.
Well, it's been rumored that it was a push made by his real-life friend CM Punk. And once Punk was able to convince Triple H to bring Danhausen in, he'd proved to be something of a merchandising machine. Yes, ever since his debut, the Demon with a love for jars of teeth has been able to establish himself in the WWE, and against all odds, become a prominent part of the show every week. Yes, it's a testament to Donovan's ability to maximize every minute he's had that he's where he's at today, basically in the role of this generation's big comedy act in WWE. But what about the prior generation's equivalent? Doesn't he deserve a spot in this video too? Why, yes he does, and that's why he's our next subject.
Yeah, true. It's my dog, man.
It's good. Wins the game at the buzzer.
Yeah, that's my dog. Man, my guy R-Truth, bro.
Truth. Of course, it should be noted here that R-Truth was a great wrestler back during his peak years. Anyone who's ever seen his work as Ron Killings over in TNA will be able to attest to that. But being a great wrestler doesn't always ensure you're going to be a big star.
Right.
For his first run in WWE back during the Attitude Era, it had very much felt like Vince McMahon didn't really know what to do with the North Carolinian, and so he had used him very sparingly. But like with Danhausen, Truth would not be content to turn into a simple flash in the pan. No, he'd be determined to use every segment he had to make sure he stood out. So it was then that during his second run in WWE, the former NWA World's Champion would lean into his funny side. Why did he do that? Well, because at some point he figured out that there were a lot of great wrestlers in WWE, and so it was harder to carve out a niche for yourself that way. But if he became a comedy goofball, WWE's premier comedy goofball in fact, he'd be pretty much guaranteed a job for life. And that's exactly what happened, as over the nearly 2 decades which followed,
until he got released, and then they brought him back.
SmackDown, with him usually anchoring comedy segments like the antics of the 24/7 title division.
That 24/7 title with R-Truth was fantastic.
When he was cut from his contract in June of 2025, the backlash was strong and immediate. So strong and immediate that the company would be forced to rehire him mere weeks later, with WWE CEO Nick Khan having to get personally involved to handle negotiations. And this has now set a precedent where we're pretty sure TKO wouldn't try to fire Truth again. No, he's maximized his minutes to such a level that he's now indispensable to the promotion and will likely be there for as long as he wants to be, collecting a nice paycheck and entertaining fans whenever he's called up to appear on TV for a goofy segment.
Indeed.
Really, he's got the dream job in many ways at this point, and he's not the only person who feels like a lifer in WWE now, given how long he's been there and how firmly rooted he's become in the whole operation. No, we could say the exact same thing about our next subject too in many ways, the man who goes by the...
Man, I need to put some respect on Miz, bro.
Pulls up, three-pointer. Bang! Bang! It's good! Wins the game at the buzzer!
Now, I talked about it. I talked about it multiple times. Y'all know how I feel about The Miz. The Miz is my favorite, most underrated wrestler of all time. And I know people gonna say that he's overrated, he's overhyped. Y'all gotta give The Miz his due. Double Grand Slam champion, WWE champion, like a 9-10 time IC champion, Money in the Bank, tag team champion, multiple time tag team champion. Bro, he did everything in WWE, and people still don't like, bro, which is crazy. You say, and he got that money for real? Facts. He went from WWE to Hollywood. He played in the Marine after John Cena didn't want to do it no more. Then he had his own TV shows. He got a beautiful wife and kids. Bro, people just hate The Miz just to hate The Miz. It's crazy, bro. The Miz is that dude for real, and I'm gonna give respect to where it is due. The Miz is my boy. That's my dog right there.
Name of The Miz. That's right, from reality TV star to multiple-time WWE champion, The Miz has had quite a journey in WWE over the years. But during his early days, few could have seen him coming as far as he has. Hell, few would have expected he'd last more than a few months at this early stage in the game, as he was notoriously unpopular with his peers to the point that he'd at one point famously be forced out of the locker room. Why was this? Well, the feeling back then was that, coming from things like MTV's The Real World and Tough Enough, Mike Mizanin wasn't a real wrestler. Rather, he was just a tourist looking to use WWE as a springboard to greater fame.
Yep.
Obviously then, this meant he was going to have to prove himself.
I would allow to mentor. Wait, what? I would allow him to mentor me. Shoot, trying to get like him. That's what I'm saying. I'll let Miz mentor me. Yeah. I would let Miz mentor me. I sure would.
And that's something the Ohio native set about doing, as using every minute of screen time he had, he did everything he could to convince people he was serious about wrestling. How would this work out for him? Pretty great, as not too long after this he'd be welcomed back into the locker room. Even then though, the perception was that this was not a guy who was ever going to be top guy material, he didn't.
Bro, look at this, man. Miz holding, well, y'all can't see it behind the chat, but Miz holding 3 championships at one time with the Big Show. He also did it with Jericho, I believe, right? Show Miz, right? It's crazy.
Was that this was
he's like that. That's what I'm saying.
Top guy material, as he didn't
and
have
people
it
don't
in the
like
same
the
way
Miz.
as real stars like John Cena or Dave Bautista did. But again, The Miz would prove people wrong over time by reaching that very level. Come on now, this is a guy who ended up walking
This
into
was
the
the
main
best
event
version of the
WrestleMania
Miz right
20
here. Miz made us hate him, and obviously he had the Miz girl meme that was going around before it was a meme. But this was the best version of the Miz. The Miz completely turned around what Vince McMahon said, because I think Vince McMahon said something about him. He did his heel work. I remember he made it think like he was like the Calgary Kid or whatever, I think against Kofi. And then he took the mask off and revealed it was him, and people booed the mess out of him because he had a contract. And then after that, he went straight to the top. Money in the Bank. He had Money in the Bank for a minute, cash it in, WWE Championship. People did not like that. It was crazy. I was one of those people that didn't like that either. But I was like, man, there's something about Miz, bro. Miz is like that for real, bro. He cool. I don't know what it was, but I'm like, yeah, Miz is that dog.
7 as the reigning and defending WWE
And then he had
champion.
Alex Riley with him.
And while he might have ultimately been a third wheel here in the larger feud between John Cena and The Rock, he still won that match, beating Big Match John at the biggest show of the year.
Yep, while
What made
concussed.
Vince McMahon trust him so much? Well, Mike Mizanin had by then shown himself to be a man who could do whatever was needed of him. It didn't matter if it was something like main eventing the Showcase of the Immortals or representing the company at a Make-A-Wish session or an autograph signing, he was always going to be there,
Look
and
at
he was
Curtis
always
Axel.
going to be a professional, with him never once causing any kind of scandal for the territory over the decades.
Yeah.
Really, he's
Miz
the
did
perennial
everything.
model WWE
Oh my God.
superstar.
Damian
That means he's
Sandow.
always going to be one of the first people called upon whenever there's some kind of PR event happening, as the company knows he can be trusted. Yes, maximizing your minutes isn't just something you do in the ring. Really, when you're in a big league promotion, it's something you have to do behind the scenes as well. But we've talked a lot about the men so far today, so let's talk about the women
Chelsea
instead for a
Green.
while, as there are certainly plenty of them who have also maximized their minutes in WWE to turn themselves into a bigger star than anyone could have expected. And if you need a perfect example of this being the case, you need only look toward our next subject, Chelsea Green.
Now, I ain't gonna lie. I was not a fan of Chelsea Green. I'm still not as much of a fan of Chelsea Green, but I do like what Chelsea Green do. I like what she do on the screen. She makes me laugh. Her character is fantastic. She definitely needs that United States Championship again. They need to give it to her. Get it out of Tiffany Stratton's hands right now. They need to give it back to Chelsea Green. And then also, I didn't know that Chelsea Green do stuff behind the scenes where she bring in like people from AEW, or like, hey, this person from AEW just got their contract, as out of their contract. Hey, WWE, y'all should go after this person. Like, pitching ideas, pitching storylines, pitching people from AEW to come to WWE. Like, Chelsea Green do all of that stuff, and it's fantastic, bro. I didn't know that she did all that stuff behind the scenes. Now that I know that, I'm like, oh yeah, Chelsea Green. They need to keep Chelsea Green. They should not get rid of Chelsea Green at all. If they get rid of Chelsea Green, I know for sure that that's a TKO move, and that's not a WWE move, because Triple H and them should love what Chelsea Green is doing for them. I ain't gonna lie.
Seriously, what a success Chelsea Green has turned into. And it's certainly not been a result of WWE having big plans for her. No, this is a reality she's pretty much been forced to create for herself. Come on now, during her initial run in WWE during the late 2010s and early 2020s, she was considered so insignificant that when she was part of a mass wave of cuts, barely anyone batted an eyelid. So how did things get to the stage they're at today, where the Canadian is often one of the women who get the most TV time every week? Well, that's a result of her taking each segment she's had and making the absolute most out of it. And what she excels at the most is the comedy side of things, much in the same way Danhausen does.
Yep.
And in becoming the goofy heel of the ladies division in WWE, she's gotten very over with fans, to the point that at stages, she's almost turned into a quasi-babyface of sorts. One who has even won a variety of titles over the course of her run.
That's true.
That's right. It would be in late 2024 that when WWE was introducing a new Women's United States title to help give the growing mid-card of the SmackDown Ladies division something to fight over, Green was pegged for the spot of inaugural champion ahead of a lot of others.
Yep.
And that's not the only belt she's held during her second run in the now TKO-owned territory either, as she's also held tag team gold in both WWE and their sister promotion, AAA.
Yep.
Hell, when it comes to her AAA run, that's arguably even more impressive, as no one is ever going to think of Chelsea Green as a luchador. So for WWE to think of her when they wanted to send a main roster star down to boost that brand, it says a lot about how much they have trust in the British Columbia native. And it also says a lot about the man who was her tag team partner when she was in possession of the AAA mixed tag team titles. Our next entry, a man who's exceeded even the wildest expectations for himself in WWE, Ethan Page.
We cooking. What?
Pulls up, three-pointer. Bang! Bang!
We cooking. Bro. Now, I ain't gonna lie, I'm not gonna be one of those Ethan Page fans that, you know, super Ethan Page. But I will say that I haven't watched Ethan Page in the indies, and I only seen a little bit of Ethan Page in AEW. But for some reason, when Ethan Page showed up in NXT, oh man, I was like, bro, Ethan Page is that dude. Bro, the character work changed. Him winning his championships and stuff, him doing all of these rivalries with Trick, with Ricky, with Joe Hendry, with all of them in NXT. Boy, Ethan Page is that dude. I seen him on TNA around 2020. I didn't even watch him around TNA. I missed that part. But I would say that Ethan Page now, oh, fantastic. I love Ethan Page, bro. I can never say a bad thing about... Oh, excuse me. I can never say a bad thing about Ethan Page. Ethan Page is that dude. I love Ethan Page, bro. That's my guy. Ego.
Now in Ethan Page, what we have is a man who's always been a very solid wrestler, something which has been evident across his runs in places like TNA and AEW. But in the latter company in particular, it felt like he was very much hitting a glass ceiling. So when he decided to make the jump to WWE in the spring of 2024 to appear as part of the NXT brand, the assumption was that the same thing was going to happen and that he'd probably end up staying on the developmental brand forever as a performer who could help build up the younger generation. How wrong we all were then, because almost immediately all ego would jump to the top of the pack, with him proving to be better than almost everyone else on the show. So good would he be here, in fact, he'd win not only the North American title, but also the NXT World title at one point.
Yep.
Truly at this point, if you were listing the success of AEW to WWE jumps, then there's an argument to be made that Ethan Page is behind only Cody Rhodes and CM Punk.
That is true.
Who could have foreseen this being the case
I didn't even think about
years
that.
ago? But it's the way things have worked out, and it's led to Page finally getting his main roster call-up recently as a full-time member of the Raw roster. Where will he go from here? Well, it's not unreasonable to think he might get a run as Intercontinental Champion before all is said and done.
Yes, sir.
And if that happens, it really will forever confirm Ethan Page as an incredible success story and an example of someone who truly maximized their minutes. But let's move away from him for now and back over to the ladies again for a second. As it's there, we find our next subject, another recent NXT.
Hey, I ain't gonna lie, he cooking with this video. He cooking with this video. He cooking with this video. Now, I ain't gonna lie. This was supposed to be Gigi's time too. This was supposed to be Gigi's time too. But I ain't gonna lie, it took me so long to see what y'all saw in JC Jane, because it was mostly just hate, because I'm like, bro, where Gigi at? Get JC Jane out my face. Y'all know how it was when I was streaming on TikTok. Y'all know how it was. It took me so long to realize how good JC Jane is. Bro, JC Jane had one of the best years last year as NXT champ and TNA champ. JC Jane was cooking. Bro, man, if I'm being honest, she really didn't need Fatal Influence to do anything for her. She was cooking on her own. It was crazy. Bro, JC Jane is fire.
NXT call-up in the form of JC Jane. Now, if we flash back to the days of NXT 2.0, then we'll be there to see Toxic Attraction, the top female stable on the show in 2021 and 2022. Making up their ranks were Mandy Rose, Gigi Dolan, and JC Jane. As you would expect then, given that Rose was already an established main roster act here, and considering the indie cred Dolan had, Jane was a very distant third in the pecking order. Flash forward to present day, however, and the New Jersey native is the only one still in the
from
company,
Jersey?
with her now leading her own stable named Fatal Influence. How did things get to such a point? Well, it didn't happen overnight, as during those early days, JC Jane was still very green in the ring. But in biding her time on NXT and using every opportunity she had for screen time to improve herself in the eyes of fans, she'd gradually work her way up the rankings.
That is true.
So high would she go, in fact, by the time 2024 came around and both Rose and Dolan were cut from the company, the lady of Rock and Rumble would be leading that aforementioned new stable of Fatal Influence. And once she was established in the role of leader, she'd take things a step further by winning the NXT Women's title from Stephanie Vaquer in May of 2025 in a shock upset. But even that wouldn't be the peak of JC and NXT.
I miss those women tag team titles. Man. They got rid of the women's tag team titles and gave them away to freaking WWE main roster, and they haven't been good since. I think the last good women's tag team to hold it was either Lash and Nia or Liv and Raquel. Those last two. But other than that, man, my man Quan in tears. because of JC. You right.
As after losing the gold, she'd end up winning it for a second time, with the second win firmly establishing her as the new top dog of the division. So come the summer of 2025 then, it was safe to say she'd long since exceeded any expectations people had for that young rookie from Toxic Attraction back at the beginning of the decade. And this eventually caught the attention of Triple H, to the point that when he was looking for new roster members to add to the SmackDown roster in the spring of 2026, the two-time NXT Women's Champion would be right at the top of that list.
Yep.
How has JC Jane fared on the blue brand since then? Pretty well, as it happens, because after setting her sights on a big target in the form of Women's Champion Rhea Ripley on night one, she and the rest of Fatal Influence were able to establish themselves as part of the main roster very quickly. So it looks like her future in WWE is going to be very bright moving forward. Will it be as bright as our next entry, though? Well, let's find out by looking at them next. Someone who's done more in WWE than most could have expected of him already, Joe Hendry.
My dog.
Side to side to say, I remember Joe Hendry, Joe Hendry, Joe Hendry, your hand from side to side to say, yeah, I believe in Joe Hendry.
All right.
Oh yeah.
Let's leave the singing to the professionals, book.
Now, I don't think there's really much to say about Joe Hendry. If I'm being honest, I didn't find out about Joe Hendry until, what year was that? I think that was 2024, a couple years ago, maybe 2023. Because I didn't watch TNA. I didn't I watched TNA, but I didn't watch TNA back then. It took me a minute because Wrestling TikTok, that was when Wrestling TikTok was singing Joe Hendry theme song. And I'm like, who theme song is this that y'all singing? And then y'all like, oh, it's Joe Hendry. So I looked it up and I heard the song and it was catchy. And I couldn't get the song out of my head for a very long time. And I was like, you know what? I got to watch more of this dude. So eventually I watched his work. And I'm like, oh, he's a comedy dude. I'm like, all right, cool. I said, I like comedy guys. So I'm looking at him and stuff. He's cutting diss tracks and songs and stuff in TNA. And I'm like, okay. So, and then it got so hype. that when TNA and WWE had the partnership, oh man, fire. Everybody was screaming for Joe Hendry to show up in NXT and WWE and stuff, which he did. Man, fantastic. I could talk all day about Joe Hendry, bro.
Why do we say Joe Hendry has already exceeded expectations? Well, because at surface level, he's very much a meme wrestler, something which often has a short shelf life in the industry. But in managing to stick around for as long as he has now, the Scotsman has been able to prove any naysayers wrong who thought he'd never make it beyond TNA. How has he done this? Well, by continuing to use his minutes to keep fans engaged in him, whether that be via his on-screen antics or his off-screen ones. That's right, Joe Hendry is another guy who gets the idea that being a successful wrestler is about more than just what you do in the ring. And this is something he's proven during his days in the Impact Zone. As it was there, he got a lot of notoriety for managing to rocket his theme song all the way up to the top of the UK download charts. As you would expect then, such a move caught him a lot of extra attention, and it led to TNA eventually putting their world title on him. By that point, however, it was clear Carlos Silva wasn't going to be able to hold on to the Edinburgh native for much longer, because as part of WWE and TNA's working relationship, he'd already started making appearances on NXT, and at one point had even showed up at WrestleMania 41 to answer Randy Orton's open challenge. So it was only a matter of time until he became a full-blown WWE roster member. And when this happened, he'd continue to use every segment he was a part of to make sure he got over, to the point that he'd win the NXT World title in February of 2026. Where is he gone from here? Well, since dropping this gold, Joe has gotten a call up on the main roster along with other peers of his we've already talked about today, names such as Ethan Page. And that has seen him become a permanent fixture on Raw. Really, at this stage then, he's truly proven himself to be a self-made wrestler. One who might even end up going bigger still by winning some singles gold on the red brand before all is said and done. Yes, by this time next year, we could be talking about Joe Hendry as an Intercontinental Champion. And if that happens, it will put him in the same air as another cult figure who held a mid-card prize not too long ago. Our next entry, as it happens,
LA
who has
Knight.
also made quite a name for himself in recent years,
Yeah.
LA Knight.
See, man, so hold on, hit him with the bang.
Pulls up three-pointer.
He said he cooking, bro. Every single person that he mentioned, he cooked with. LA Knight is another one of those dudes, man. Like I said, LA Knight. I didn't know who LA Knight was until he came to NXT. I'm like, who the heck is who the heck is LA Knight? And people already knew LA Knight from his time in TNA and NWA, Eli Drake, stuff like that. Tag team champion with Steiner. See, I didn't watch TNA around that time, like I said, so I didn't know who this was. I didn't find out about who he was until he got into NXT. And even in NXT, I wasn't really sold on LA Knight, just because he was fighting Cameron Grimes, and Cameron Grimes was one of my favorite wrestlers around that time. So I wasn't really attached to LA Knight like that. Not knowing that after his feud with Bray, rest in peace to Bray, LA Knight would be one of those people that would get super over with the yeah. Everybody saying yeah so much that we eventually wanted LA Knight to win a world title. We still want LA Knight to win a world title. Will it happen? I don't know. LA Knight is getting older now. He's like mid-40s or whatever. It could happen. If Jey Uso can win a world title, LA Knight can win one. I still believe it can happen. Will it happen? I don't know. It's up to WWE, but we'll see.
Seriously now, during the 2020s, LA Knight has gone through quite a career trajectory, with him going from member of the NWA roster to undercard comedy act on WWE TV.
I forgot about this. Man, this made me so mad. See, I forgot about this during COVID. This made me so mad. I completely forgot about that. This dude Vince said, "Hey, we gonna bring up LA Knight as Maxine Dupree for the Maximum Male Models." Maximum Male Models? Yeah. Max Dupree and then Maxine Dupree, Maximum Male Models. They're brother and sister. And then LA Knight was like, man, forget that, bro. He's, I'm finna do my own thing. Yeah, and yep, took off.
To one of the most over figures on the entire show at one point. And to reach that last stage, he really had to maximize his minutes, as the company themselves were never going to put him in such a spot. Though the rise of the man formerly known as Max Dupree is pretty much all down to him getting so over with fans during whatever screen time he had during those early days. How did he get so over? Well, that was largely down to his promo skills.
Yeah, his promo skills is fire.
Stone Cold Steve.
His promo skills is fire. I ain't gonna lie. Like, if there's anybody that could cut really good promos in today's like WWE, it's definitely LA Knight. LA Knight is one of those people that he can cut fantastic promos, bro. Fantastic promos. He's like dang near, I would say, I'll put him in top 10 right now in WWE for promos. For like active wrestlers right now. Because LA Knight, man, fire. Absolutely fire.
Steve Austin and The Rock, he was able to capture the attention of the WWE audience en masse. So much so that even when Vince McMahon damn near buried him with the aforementioned Max Dupree gimmick, the business manager of the Maximum Male Models, he was able to get this goofy gimmick over. And that eventually created a situation where he even began flirting with the main event scene by challenging Roman Reigns for the undisputed WWE Universal title after it became clear audiences were more than hungry for it, they were rabid. No, LA Knight wouldn't win this match, but he would be rewarded with a consolation prize not too long after when he got a run as United States Champion. And for a man who at one point seemed doomed to be nothing more than a manager to an undercard comedy act, this was quite a turnaround in fortunes. Hell, it was proof positive that, if you make the most of what you're given and show your bosses that you're simply undeniable, you might be able to break through that glass ceiling as a self-made man. Sure, he might never win that elusive world title, but that's almost beside the point, as what Shawn Ricker has been able to do is make himself a star when few thought he could ever reach that level in WWE.
That's true.
And if we look elsewhere in modern day
Kit
WWE,
Wilson,
we'll find another performer who's on a similar trajectory at the moment, as they're currently in the process of riding a wave that's taking them from comedy undercard act to something more. Who are we talking about here? Why, Kit Wilson, of course.
now, oh snap, this is a good game. It's a 4-point game now. The Cavaliers was up by 20, and now New York is coming back. They're down by 4. With Kit Wilson, I don't know how I feel about Kit Wilson yet. I get it. His theme song is catchy. His theme song is catchy. So, you know, but I don't know how I feel about Kit Wilson just yet. Kit Wilson. You know, theme song is catchy. Theme song is catchy, you know, so. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about Kit Wilson yet. I liked him in Pretty Deadly, but I get it's different now, so, you know.
Of course. Now, Kit Wilson wasn't exactly nothing on WWE TV prior to his most recent gimmick, as his tag team with Elton Prince, the one known as Pretty Deadly, was a fun enough duo. But even then, it was clear there was a very definitive ceiling to the whole thing. And the reason we say that is because, in a company which rarely treats tag team wrestling as a focus at the best of times, this pairing was always going to fall away behind other more prominent acts like the Usos or the New Day. Thankfully then, for at least one half of Pretty Deadly, the London-born half of the pair would get an unexpected boost in his profile in 2025 that took him to new heights. Sure, his partner would have to get injured for this to happen, so it was a bitter pill in some ways, but Kit Wilson didn't let the opportunity slip away from him when it arrived. No, when he was tasked with portraying what at first seemed like just another undercard comedy gimmick, he made the most out of it and was able to rise higher than anyone could have ever anticipated. What was this new gimmick exactly? Well, it was a modern man who didn't like the idea that so many of his colleagues were showing so much toxic masculinity in the workplace. Despite it seeming like it probably wasn't going to go anywhere at first, this quickly caught on with fans and turned the Englishman into
It
a
didn't
bit of a
catch up
cult
with me.
sensation.
It didn't
Sure, a part
catch
of the
up with me.
reason
I
for
was like,
that was
what in the
because
world
of
is
theme
this?
Song, a catchy pop song which audiences were only too happy to sing along with every time Wilson came out through the curtain on an episode of SmackDown. But another part of the reason was because he was able
Ain't
to
no
commit
way
himself
New
so
York
much
just
to
tied
role
the
in such a
game,
convincing
alright?
manner. Because he did that,
He said
it felt
it
like
with
he was
me.
having fun with it whenever he showed up on screen. And this made it easier for fans to have fun with it too as a result. Honestly, it's never going to be a world title level gimmick or anything, but given how it started, the fact it might end up seeing the Londoner win a mid-card strap one day is saying a lot about what he's made of both it and the minutes he's been afforded on TV over the past few months. Of course, you don't have to be on the main roster to make the most of your minutes in WWE though. No, as people like Joe Hendry and JC Jane have already showed us, you can do the same thing even if you're down on the NXT brand.
Though.
Hell, in some ways, it's more important to do it down there, as this is the level where you're effectively auditioning for a main roster role every week.
Oh, I thought that James Harden just won the game. They going into overtime, boy. My bad. I had to pause the video because I thought that I had to pause the video, bro. I thought that James Harden just won the game for Cleveland, bro. They going into overtime.
And in recent times, few have maximized their minutes down in developmental more than our next entry. Who are we talking about this
Ariana
time?
Grace? Hey, man. Yo, hey. He cooked with every single one of these people.
Wins the game at the buzzer.
He cooked with every single one of these people. Man. Hey, this is a bro, fantastic video. Fantastic video, man.
Who else but Ariana Grace? Yes, Ariana Grace has already achieved more than many fans expected. How did this happen? Well, like with everyone else we've looked at today, it came as a result of her maximizing every opportunity she had to show what she could do on screen. And this didn't have to be during matches either. Rather, it was always going to be her character work as a comedic goofball of her division.
Yeah.
But then what else would you expect from the daughter of Santino Marella?
Yep.
Someone who was, for many years, WWE's premier comedy goofball alongside R-Truth.
Yeah, she learned from her
It runs in
dad.
Family to play into the funny side of things.
She learned
more
from
than
her
anything
dad.
else. And this has seen her slowly start to rise up the ranks of NXT over the past few years as she's gotten more and more established within that system. Hell, as things stand right now, she's a prominent member of the Birthright, a stable made up of second-generation stars of tomorrow, like Uriah Connors, the son of Fit Finlay, Lexis King, the son of Brian Pillman, Charlie Dempsey, the son of William Regal, and Channing Stax Lorenzo, someone who's just kind of snuck in there under the radar. So she's regularly being featured on TV every Tuesday. But it's not just Tuesdays that Ariana Grace has been featured on as of late. No, as part of WWE's working relationship with TNA, she's been able to go over to the Impact Zone at times as well, with her there working directly alongside her dad. And taking this opportunity and using it for all it's worth,
Like
she was
father,
even
like
able to
daughter.
rise to the top of the mountain on that brand for a while by beating Lei Ying Li to become Knockouts champion. Sure, it was a somewhat short run, with it mostly being used to further the idea that a group of NXT performers were invading Impact. That said, it proved that even if it was on a smaller brand, the Ontario native could be trusted with some top gold. And this has to put her in better standing for winning a title back over in WWE one day. Will this actually happen? That remains to be seen. But even if it doesn't, Ariana Grace has already used the TV time she's been given to its fullest in order to start her rise up the card. And that's a lesson every performer should be heeding, as it shows that, even if you aren't initially pegged as someone who's going to be a big star in WWE, if you make the most of your minutes, you can become a self-made wrestler. Someone who forces the company to do something more with you, just like everyone else we've looked at today.
Hey, man. Shout out to Wrestle with Andy, bro.
Pulls up three-pointer. Bang!
He cooked with no misses.
Wins the game at the buzzer.
He cooked this video with absolutely no misses at all. Every single person that he talked about in this, fantastic. Shout out to Wrestle with Andy, man. That was a banger. I ain't gonna lie. That was a banger. I can't wait to throw this reaction up. This reaction gonna be fire.